Hello everyone. Today in this channel we are going to start a new series on Terraform videos. As part of this series of videos, I'll be creating small videos on different topics so that you can go through selected videos as per your requirement or as per your need. Without getting further delay, let's begin the discussion. Hi, my name is Rakesh Suryavanshi and you're watching Be a Learner. Today in the very first video, let's discuss about the Terraform variables. For the demonstration, I'll be using Visual Studio Code. Here in my Visual Studio Code, I have main.tf file which has got the Azure provider so that in case if we require to use any Azure resources for our demonstration, we would be required to declare the provider. Now let's say we would like to create a simplest resource in Azure. Let's say for example we would like to create a resource group in Azure. So how do we do that? Search for resource group for example in Terraform, and this is what the documentation you have found. So to create a resource group, you have to use the resource, which is a resource type, Azure RM resource group. The instance of the resource, I can give any instance name, and then name of your resource group, for example demo RG, Friday demo RG, and the location in which you would like to create the resource group. Now if I run this Terraform init, this will initialize the Terraform Azure RM provider and it will download the exe so that we can interact with Azure. Initialization is completed. Now let's run Terraform plan. This is just I'm running plan for our understanding how we run the Terraform on our local machine. So the plan is completed and plan is showing that this is the resource group which is going to be created in my Azure subscription. So now if I run the Terraform apply command basically, so it will create the resource group. So let's run the apply. And the resource group is created. I can verify the resource group. So if I go to the resource group, here we have created a simplest resource in Azure with the help of Terraform resource block. That's not the topic of our discussion. The topic is what are the variables. For that, we need to understand why do we need to use variable. Why do we require to use variables? So if you see here in this resource block, we have created a resource group using this resource type, which is Azure RM underscore resource. To create this resource type, which is Azure resource group in Azure, you require to pass two parameters, which is the name of the resource group and the location. So obviously you don't want to give the name like this, because here if you provide the value it will work, but it's not the efficient way. Here basically you are hard coding the name of your resource group for example, and the location as well, right? So you don't want to do that. So in that case you would require to pass these values through some form of parameters or the variables, and that's where we are supposed to use the variables. So what we can do is in Terraform we can create a variables like variable, which is the keyword, and then name of your variable which you want to create. For example, I would like to give it a name as in resource underscore group underscore name. So in Terraform it is recommended to use a proper naming convention. All of them should be in a small case and you should have the underscore in between the particular word. So like I have resource underscore group underscore name, which says that is the name of the resource group. I can describe the variable if it is needed. It's totally optional. You can also provide the default value of your variable as well. So I can put the default value as in, let's say temp RG, So this is what the resource group, this is how you can define the resource group variable name. Similarly, I can define the location parameter and I can give it the name of the location as well. So I can describe as an location, and default again we can give it, let's say US for example. Now here, to use these variables we need to use the keyword var and then name of your variable. Similarly, you can use var dot resource group name, and this is how you can define your variable. So now if I run the Terraform plan, it should basically show me it's going to recreate the resource group because now we have given some different name. Right, the values are coming right here from this section. So you can see that here in the plan it's showing that the location is east US, which is the default value of our variable, and similarly the value of the resource group name is default again. So I'll just change the value back to the default, and then same as the location value, back default to the West Europe. In that case it's not going to show any changes. So that's number one. You can declare the variables like this. You can pass on the default values. So now let's say we would like to define the tags for our variables for our resource group. So I can say var dot tags, and then I can use the default tags variable, declare the tag variable here, and default value, let's say I can give empty tag because tag should be type of map which will have the key value pair. So I need to define the tab as variable as in map type. In Terraform, declaring a variable is so easy. You don't need to remember the type of the variable. For example, even though let's say if I do not declare the resource group type, that's also okay. If I do not declare the description of the variable, that is also okay. If I do not specify the default value as well, that is also accepted. So now if I want, I can always declare a variable with just a name without specifying the type, the description, or its default value. That will also work. So now if I run the Terraform plan, it will run the plan, but this time the Terraform detects that it has found the value of two parameters, parameter location and tag, but it has not found the value of resource group, and that's the reason during the plan it is asking what is the value of the resource group variable. I can specify, let's say my RG. So it will accept this value, and then you can basically pass, it will try to create the resource group with this particular resource group name. So that's option number one. I hope this is clear. Now obviously to pass the value of the variable at the runtime, it's not an efficient way you are going to pass each and every variable from the Terraform plan or apply command one by one. You can, I'll show you how, but it's not the way usually you pass it, right? So what is the different way to pass the value? There are different file type in Terraform available to pass the value of your variable, which is of type tfvars extension file. So let's create a tfvar file. So there is a reserved file which is called terraform.tfvars. So this is a file type which you can create in your Terraform configuration, and you can pass the values of your variables like this. So now if I run the Terraform plan, it will pick up the values from the terraform.tfvar file, and you can see that the values are picked up from the Terraform variables files, and it didn't ask us at the runtime. That's number one. That's how you can also create any name with tfvar extension. tfvars and then provide the similar kind of value. So let's say if we provide the value here, and if you want to run the Terraform plan, you can specify var -file equals to, let's say, dev.tfvars, and this is how you can pass the value to your Terraform plan command. As we can see, it has accepted the value. Now there is another way to pass the individual variables with the Terraform plan command. So you can use var tfvars file, and then you can also include individual variable for using the -var. Then you can specify the variable, let's say location, and we want to say West US, for example, the value of the variable. So now this time it should basically try to create a resource group in this particular location. As I said, it's trying to recreate the resource group because we have changed the location while calling the Terraform plan command. Just a good practice advice: you should not declare your variables in your main file or the file in which you are creating resources. You should be always creating a variables.tf file, and you should put all your variables over there just for the segregation and for everyone's understanding. So this is how you should define your variable in a separate file. Now, so far we have seen how do we declare a variable, how do you pass the default value to the variable, how do you pass the value from a reserved file, which is a tfvar file, terraform.tfvars file, to variable values from the terraform tfvar files. How do you pass the values to your variable from the any tfvar files like dev.tfvars or example.tfvars. And we have also seen how do you pass the values to your variables with the help of Terraform plan or Terraform apply command. Now the question is, what is the precedence order for accepting the values of these variables? So if you look at the precedence, the least precedence of the variables is going to be the default value. So if you are not passing the value of any variables, it will become the default value. But if you pass the value of that variable, it will accept the value which you have passed. So that default value is the least precedence. Next precedence goes to the terraform.tfvars file, which is your reserved variable assignment file where you are assigning the values to your variable. Next precedence goes to the file type which you are passing here, and then the precedence and the last precedence goes to the command line parameters in which you are passing the values of your variables. So this is how the order of precedence for your variable works. I hope it's clear now how do you define the variables and how do you use the variable in Terraform. Now let's look at how do you use the other type of variable. So far we have seen the variable type, which is also called the input variable type, because these are the variables which are going to use as an input to your Terraform code. So whenever you are going to run your Terraform, you are trying to provision any resources in the Terraform, these variables will act as an input information for those resources. Now in Terraform we also have a variable type called output. So you can return the outcome of your Terraform code block using the output variable. So you can declare it like output. So this is output keyword. You need to specify the name of your output variable or output type. So let's say I would like to see location, for example, RG location. Let's say here I can return anything. I can return, let's say, thanks RG location. I can declare anything, let's say test. I can also declare variable, which could be any type of variable. Let's say, for example, I would like to return something which is from this particular resource type. So I can declare a variable, let's say resource group name, RG name, or RG ID, for example. So let's say, how do we return the ID of resource ID of the resource group? You can return it like resource group name .rg.id. This is going to be the resource ID of the resource group, and we are returning it as an RGID. So now if I run Terraform plan again, so you can see that we are trying to modify the resource group, because here we have the values of the variables are received based on the precedence. Values are received from this particular file, so it has got the tags. So this apply plan command is trying to show me that it's going to update the tags to the existing resource group, and this is going to be my output variables, which will look like this. So my RGID will be the resource ID of the resource group, which is the subscription resource group and the name of the resource group. Okay, this is how you can use it. I hope this was helpful to understand how do you create and define variables, how do you use it in your program. Thanks for watching the video. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. See you in the next video.